Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Big upgrades.
Hey,
Well, so guys,
yo,
we're here. Hey, hey. And we got C God in the house too.
Yes.
Sup, C God?
Well,
How's mom
Sea
life?
God
She
and
lives in my
many,
house.
many Sea God.
Mini H God.
We're doing mom life right now. I'll be in and out.
Nice. Mom life.
Yeah,
That's great.
it's really cool waking up with a little
Hashtag
baby.
multitask.
She's so fun. She's so expressive. Oh man, she's already like at the stage. Well, okay, she's what, 2 months? Yeah, a little bit over 2 months now, and she will express to us when she wants to be picked up without crying, which is really cool. So like, so
What does she do?
What does she do? How did
Yeah,
she text you?
Did she text you or
Blink twice.
do you flash
Yeah,
a green
she-
laser and then she does 3 blue lights back?
Does she say, "Hey, motherfucker, get me"?
she does Morse code. Yeah. No.
Advanced.
She like, so she'll like, babble with us, like talking like, right. But she'll make a specific sound when she wants to get up, and it's cool because I'm like, oh, you want to get up, all right, and then she'll stop after that. Like after you pick her up, she's like, okay, like it's and she does it consistently every time that we like put her down to, like, I don't know, play on her play mat or in her little bouncer or whatever. She'll chill there for a while, and then when she's ready, she'll start making that noise.
That's so
See,
cool.
and that shows like the parents who just put their kids in daycare and all that stuff. You would never learn that stuff,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
you know. And there's and then there's and then they say, like, well, I knew when to pick my kid up and all that stuff. It's like, but there's a lot of other things you're not. It's just an example. Like there's a lot of things you're not connecting with your child.
Somebody sent me a video, I think it might have been Katie, of like this mom. I think actually, yeah, this mom was dropping her kid off at daycare, and she was recording when she would go pick up her kid, and her kid would be crying, just absolutely, just like as soon as he saw her, just like upset. And then
In like what way? Like, I don't want to go home, or I do.
no, in a way of like, why'd you leave me here? Like, oh my god,
Oh,
you're back.
okay.
Like
Like,
you
what
know,
the
just
fuck?
like, oh,
Dang.
like running to her, crying, just like, why, and it was so interesting because she's like, oh, it's so hard, dropping you off and seeing you like this, and this year has just been so tough on us. And she turned it into, it was the most ridiculous thing. She turned it into, because it's a montage of a bunch of videos of her picking up her kid, him crying, him like being distraught as soon as he sees her, and like running to her and all this. And then
They like pick the kid up and they're like, "Oh, honey, yeah. Tell me again how sad you were." Oh, yeah. Oh.
right,
Like putting filters on.
right. So then towards the end, then he's like less distraught. Now he's just excited to see her, and then he's like happy when he sees her and everything. And she does like this voiceover, and the voiceover is like, I was looking at my son being just so upset and feeling like, why did you leave me here? But now, as the years progress, and he knows that I'm going to come back for him and all this, I just remember like God, that's how I feel about God. Just like, sometimes I look up and I'm like, why did you leave me here? Why is my life like this? But then I always remember he's going to come back for me. And that's the lesson that I learned from my little baby. I'm like, what the fuck? And people are commenting on it, and the comments are all like, oh, it's such a beautiful message. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. But I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like, oh, also, you know what I learned recently?
Dude, I'm so glad you said that, because I was like telling Katie this morning, I was like, we need to do a podcast today called "Religion is Dumb."
We need to do a podcast where we leave our kids at the daycare, Katie. And she was like, Cameron, I think you're fucked in the head or something.
Dude, I was just thinking about how like I wasn't like one of the kids who was bullied in school a bunch, but there were like a few times I can remember where like a kid would be really mean to me, like it was like stronger or bigger, whatever. Not in school, but like when I was younger at daycare, I remember that. And I remember one time my mom came to pick me up, and I was like telling her, hey, this kid was like, I forget what it was. It was like really mean shit, like throwing rocks or I don't know, something like that, right? Or just whatever. I remember telling her, she like went like to confront the kid or whatever, and it was just like, and then I went back the next day. You know, like
came back. She came back and she was like, he was really fucking mean. He hit me too.
She was like, hold on. Let me set up the tripod. Can you throw those rocks again? We didn't have cell phones, unfortunately. I bet my mom.
This reminds me of when God in the Bible said to throw stones. Remember that when they were told to stone the Gentiles?
Stone everybody. Just stone everybody. Just fucking everybody that you don't like.
He who is
such
without
a beautiful
sin
message.
cast the first stone. Like, okay, so why wasn't Jesus fucking throwing rocks at everybody? Why wasn't Mary throwing rocks at everybody? She had no sin, right?
Apparently.
What the fuck, man? Like this, it's not even a consistent story.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. Before we get into all of that, there's one other thing I wanted to say on this daycare point because it's at the top of my mind right now. I just recently learned that in New York City, you can put your kid at daycare because the state will pay for it. The city will pay for it at like 3 years old or 2 years old or whatever. And so I was reading some comment of a mom in some Facebook group. I don't even know where it was, but she was saying, this was her comment. She said, she went to the dentist. Her kid is 4 years old. She went to the dentist and the dentist said, oh, are you still homeschooling her? And she was like, she's fucking 4 years old. This is not even the age for school, but because in New York that they can do preschool or whatever, and it's paid for, everyone puts their kid in preschool by 3 years old.
School.
And they call it school.
I mean, it's more obviously school than actual school, but yeah.
And so it's interesting because I just found that super interesting based on people have to pay for preschool here still, right? I mean, there are definitely programs where the government will pay if you make below a certain income, but it's not just like everybody can go to preschool and it's all paid for by the government.
It's like we're doing it to ourselves. Like you're basically paying all these taxes in New York to brainwash you and everyone else's kids. It's like you're still paying for it. Like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's pretty insane actually. So I just wanted to speak on that real quick because like you said, we're doing it to ourselves where clearly the state wants your child and they want them to think a certain way. And that's also clearly evident by, I mean, look at what's going on in the media. What were you saying, Mitch, about the bridge in Minnesota?
Oh, yeah. So here, it's like 20 years ago, the main bridge that goes over the Mississippi River, like is between the two cities, it collapsed. This was, I don't know, 2008 or something. And
because of the housing crisis.
Hey man, I don't want to do conspiracies, man. Okay. But anyway, they rebuilt like some walking bridge right next to it. It's really nice. I actually want to go down there and look at it. But then the first like honorary like lighting that they give to it, at least that I'm aware of, because it is still brand new, is they lit it up blue.
Can I guess? Wait, can I get?
Oh.
Why
Are you going to guess any other color? Blue, white,
I was going to guess
and
black and yellow for BLM, or I don't know what the colors are.
No, see, I was going to think red, white, and blue for fucking America.
For Russia.
Because, whoa, buddy, whoa.
I meant
not the R word. Not
France,
the R word.
for France.
Blue and yellow for Ukraine.
Oh yes, there we go.
Hey, do you guys remember about that Ukraine place?
What is a Ukraine? Like it's like a crane. Like is it like U-Haul, but you crane it?
It was like this country that we were
somewhere in Europe
at one point a long time ago, or I
don't know.
It was like everybody was talking about it. Do you guys remember that? No,
that sounds like a
it's like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah,
that sounds like a conspiracy. Yeah, it's just crazy. So I was like, wow, they really just did this. Like they did the blue and white thing, but we're also like this, hotspot for BLM, which is very pro Palestine.
Right, that's where George Floyd happened.
Literally, yeah. And so
George Floyd happened. BLM, everything BLM, yeah, BLM. I was thinking about it, like, okay, the MLB, NFL, DHL, whatever.
Right,
like,
they were said Black Lives Matter on their jerseys.
Like on the courts, like Black Lives Matter, and now everyone's like, fuck Black Lives Matter, like they support Palestine and all this fucking. It's like, if we could go, okay, let's go back in time, and let's say I'm a time traveler, and I'm like, guys, there's gonna a terrorist attack in Israel. And it's going to be Hamas, Palestine, all this, right? Okay. And then people are going to have to choose sides on, do they support Palestine or do they support Israel? Which one do you think, if you could guess, if you could bet, which one would you bet BLM would support?
No,
Who the fuck would be like, oh, they're going to support Israel?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you
I was
could
gonna
say, well,
it
look,
makes sense that they would support Palestine to be like, I
it
don't see
makes
them supporting
100%
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
It's like
it's literally like
I was listening to something. The guy was like, these elite people who are all pissed. Okay, do you hear about this thing where some CEO of some shit like was like, I want the list.
Ackerman or something like that.
Yeah, I want the list of college kids in Harvard who like are signing a pro-Palestinian whatever because we don't want to hire them, and then other people are jumping on there like, yeah, we want that list too. Yeah. And this guy's making this point like all these elites brainwashed all these elite college kids to like decolonize your mind and side with the oppressed and all this shit. And then now it's like, how dare you not support Israel and support these Palestinian fucking animals and all this stuff? And it's like,
it's crazy, right? Like, okay,
it's so funny.
It's so funny as well. Because we have some friends that are native, right? And
native, like Australian Aboriginal.
That one, yeah.
What are we talking?
That's it.
Yeah, what kind of native? You need to know how oppressed
savage,
they are.
I mean,
therefore, how much
savages?
How much
society are savages?
Yeah. But it's interesting because obviously from their perspective, it's like it's obvious to them. They're like, hello. We have gone through something very similar here in this country. And like, okay, especially in Canada, it's
hold on, wait. What's the similar point?
Because in Canada, right, you side with the natives. It's like their land was taken from them. We came in here and pushed them away, and we put them into these reservations and made their lives much more terrible than they were.
So, but which side should they support then?
The natives?
Yeah,
obviously they support Israel. Gosh.
Well, but hold on, I'm not being sarcastic. Like, isn't that the whole point? Is like the Israelis were pushed out, or like the Hebrews were pushed out of their land, and that's why historically it was really their place, and that's why they should get it back, and they should have a right to it. Isn't that the whole story?
Oh, you know what? That is
they were the original oppressed.
Like that's what all these people are like, Ben Shapiro types are saying. It's like because they're like, well, hold on. Israel, like, why do they have to fucking be there? That's like the question, right? Why do they even have to be there? Like, why couldn't they be anywhere else? Like, why did they have to be right there? And it's like, well, historically, and you go back into records and it was their land, and it's like, okay, so they're trying to make an argument that it was originally their place. And it's like,
sure.
So now explain to me why the Native Americans don't have a right to, like, how do you do that? And it all comes down to but you put like the God and the religious point in there. It's like if you take that part out, it's just a land dispute. It's just a fucking like who has a right to the land. If you take the religion part out, then there's no other. It was their land. It's like, okay, let's go back to the fucking ancient Romans and Greeks and shit. Then, like, what are you talking about? Like, at what point in history is significant? It's only significant if you put the religious part in there,
right?
Yeah.
And I heard another. Well, actually. What's interesting about it is I was aware of all the Palestinian stuff. And some people are going to get upset about, oh, you're taking a side or this side or that side. And I was listening to, what was I doing? I was fixing an electric fence. I was basically, we have several, I don't want to call them concentration camps, but, we have to keep our pigs in line.
You were oppressing your pigs?
So I constantly am surveilling them, and I have electric fencing, and I provide their water. Right. And basically there's a blockade. I don't allow anything to come in or out that I don't want. And I call it palace swine.
Wow.
It's out there.
Hey, like palace of swine.
Yes.
Hey,
so what did you think I was referring to? Palace. That's beautiful.
It's a beautiful, wonderful palace. Like,
yeah. What were you guys thinking of?
Yeah. What were you thinking? Anyways, I was listening to like Dave Smith. He's like that libertarian guy, and they were his co-host guy, they were going to start talking about the Israel-Palestine. The guy was like, just before off the bat, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware I'm totally not down with baby murder. You know, because I feel like these days, right now, you have to like really explicitly say that and be really clear that you're not okay with the baby murder. Okay. Yeah. Before we talk about anything, he's like, it's like, and Dave Smith was like, yeah, it's like, you think that would just be like a base assumption that when you're discussing these things, you're not okay with the baby murder. You know, it's like you have to be like, look, of course what Hamas did is terrible. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, why do you even have to fucking?
Because it's crazy. You're right. Because otherwise you get accused of like, oh, baby murder is okay. Like that's the argument.
Well, it's like
only abortion is okay.
Yeah, it's only okay if the mother chooses it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, even that aside, it's like it's not about right and wrong, because when I say it's not about right and wrong, like no one actually is thinking about it in those terms, because now I'm okay. So just real quick, I mean, you guys may have been as well, but I was aware of the whole Palestine, how fucked that situation is for a while, like many, many years, right? And knowing that, okay, it's like basic, you know what's fascinating too? And someone said this on a podcast, and I was thinking this, like, I think it was the Jimmy Dore podcast. They were talking about this point where it's like, you hear all these people saying like, you know, Palestine's an open air concentration camp or whatever, right? Whatever they call it, open air prison or whatever. Mm-hmm. And nobody goes, no, it's not. That's a lie. Do you hear anyone saying that? Like no one is denying that. That's what's fucked about it. It's like, but how dare they? Okay, look, it's fucked. Like it's a total fucked situation. Like if would I want that to happen to me? No. Either thing. Like be the Palestinian person or be the Israeli person where your family's kidnapped and murdered. I wouldn't want to be in either of those points. So they're both unacceptable. So it's not like justifying anything. But I see justification on both sides. Like the people who are pro-Palestinian are like, oh, it's good what they're doing, or they're it's valid or something, because what else can they do?
You gotta stand up for yourself. You gotta fight back.
But then on the other side, like there can't be any acknowledgement of it's a fucked situation. Like, and I'm not going to blame the Israelis, because we know why it's all happening. It's because of people's education is fucked. And when I say education, I don't just mean, oh, they didn't learn algebra in school properly.
They didn't go to New York kindergarten.
Right. I mean, like the way in which they think about the world, the way in which they think about life and other beings and human beings and animals and plants and like everything, the way in which the context of life, everything is fucked. Like from the moment that you're born, all the patterns you learn, everything, all of that is fucked. That's what I mean by education in this context.
Really simple, obvious example of this is being told like, hey, you know, okay, first off, there's a guy in the sky who is all powerful and all knowing, and he created all of this. And you know what? He loves you the most. You are his favorite. You are his, like, out of everybody on the planet, you're his favorite. And everyone else sucks, pretty much. They're all just assholes. That's part of your education, right? If you were raised that way, you would see yourself as like, I am the favorite of God. Like, so, you know, it would basically be like this. It'd basically be like, you're the prince that was born into royalty, and you're told everyone else is a fucking peon, and you are like, nothing could ever compare to you. Nothing could compete with you. Nothing is better than.
Hey, too soon. Nothing compares to you. Okay. Sinead O'Connor just died like last week. I know you guys are so focused on Israel and Palestine. The most important thing.
What?
Okay, it was clearly Sinead O'Connor.
I don't even get this reference.
Nothing. Nothing compares to you. That song. It's like the famous song of Sinead O'Connor.
No.
Nothing compares to you.
I don't even know who Sinead O'Connor is.
The song.
I've heard that name.
What is she also became Muslim at the end of her life.
Ooh.
Jeez.
And she's like Irish, I think.
See,
she was the one who like had her head shaved like in the 90s.
You're gonna have to play
Nothing compares to you
for me later.
It was like a really good song. I mean, it's just
a
bullshit love song.
Anyway, as I was saying before, I was so cavalierly interrupted with this bullshit.
I was just blockading your words.
I see that. I see that now, but I will not allow that to happen. I will stand up for myself. We will bomb your words. Anyway, basically, if you're taught that, you can imagine. I think it's really easy to imagine because I think people look at, princes and kings all the time today anyway, and they're like, what makes them better than me? But literally, they were told that God selected them to rule over all of you. Okay. And so it's something so simple to see that's like, okay, that does not make sense. That clearly did not happen. God didn't go to Prince, whatever the fuck his name, King Charles, whatever. He didn't go to him and be like, I want you to rule over all of England and all the people there.
He was like, you're my best and brightest.
Especially like the way you go, on Epstein Island and, how you massage that underage girl.
And how all your descendants also do the same.
Yeah, really, like what it is it is those first 7 years. And we're little kids in this world with fuck patterns. We download it. And then we grow up as adults and it's not being questioned as much as it is worthy to be questioned.
Dude, imagine you're that person who like, you're born into a family that they're telling you like you're selected by God. First off, there's a God. And second off, you're selected.
First of all, there's a God. Let me explain that part.
Yeah. Second of all, you're his favorite and he selected you to rule over everybody else, and everybody else is a piece of shit that you get to just step all over whenever you want. And then you grow up as that person and you meet somebody else who also has that same belief, but in the opposite direction to you. Right? And they're like, you're a little piece of shit. And you're like, no, you're a little piece of shit. It like, don't you think that's going to cause a conflict?
Of course, but then it's like, but who fucking cares? Because there's some afterlife we got sold on. So why be here and worry too much about this? Because in the afterlife, I will have some fucking made up idea.
You know what? I guess that justifies me just killing you. Because
whoa. Okay, I'm like pretty sure there's an afterlife, but I'm not 100% sure. So like, don't fuck this shit up, okay, buddy?
Listen.
Right, like if you were 100% certain, you would like really not care what happens.
Right.
Listen, God chose me. I can just annihilate you, and we're all good. I'll see you later.
This is so fascinating. There's a show that Jess and I like. The last show me and Jess watched was Designated Survivor fucking 4 years ago. We just watched that together, like in the evening, winding down. We don't watch much for shows. Okay. But we're like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to enjoy this series. And it's called The Last Kingdom. Have you ever seen this? It's like about it's like England and the Danes, which the Danes are like basically like they give out Viking vibes. This must be in 1500. I don't fucking know.
Danish.
Yeah. It reminds me of
the Great Danes. Are they like some kind of weird animal human hybrid?
They're big, tall dogs. I get it.
They're just like scary people in the show, right? But the show's really well done. It's very interesting because it's like the Danes are trying to take over England, and then the English are like trying to unite themselves all under one England, and it's like pretty intense and graphic and stuff. But it's like the pace of the show is very entertaining because so much happens in each episode. Anyway. There's like a recurring theme throughout the show of like religion because
let me guess the theme.
Okay.
He already said
it.
Well, you gotta give a pause before we can guess.
Okay. Well, there's two themes in the show, so guess the two themes.
Let me guess the second theme.
Okay.
Isn't there like Isn't there a Mitch Hedberg trick like that, Drake?
What?
Where it's like where he does that joke where he's like, the person asks the question and says the point. Do you know what I'm talking about? And he's like, you got to pause before you.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm talking about? What is the joke? I can't remember it.
I'll remember it. I'll remember it.
Okay. Tell us later.
Yeah. Keep going, Mitch.
Are you going to fucking guess? You just went on this whole tirade about wanting the ability to guess.
I'm going to guess religion.
What's
Drake,
the other one?
Would you like to guess something else?
Jeopardy. What is religion?
Sex. There's a lot of sex.
Okay.
It is sex.
So it's a specific point about religion is fascinating because the English are like devout to God. They're like, God is good and God is the reason for this. And it's so funny because they'll say stuff like that, but then they'll be directly contradicted. So they'll be like a priest, right? And the Dane's about to kill him. He's like, are you scared? He's like, and he's like bringing him to that point where he's about to like fucking kill him. And then the guy will be like, he won't admit he's not scared, but he's like, God is great. And they're like, okay, we'll see about that. And he like slits his throat. And it's so fascinating because then you see how the English are so set on this idea of like, God is the master, God does everything, like fucking, it's always God's will. And the Danes are more like practical with it. But it would seem that though these Danes are like savages because they just like, you know, don't go to church and whatever, but they more just like pray through their philosophy of like living and how they go and like, you know, live and fucking are one with nature and all that. And so I'm seeing it though. I'm like, man, because then I'll like see some clip from Ben Shapiro, like spouting some shit about, well, God and this and that and the other thing. And I'm just like, man, what if this is really the test of our lives? Is can you come on to Earth and hear all this crazy insanity and actually see fucking through it and really live this message of, hey, what if we actually wanted to just treat each other as equals? Like, what if when you die, you get reborn in another body, but you don't get to choose which one?
Or in the words of Biggie, what if when you die, fuck it, I want to go to hell because I'm a piece of shit. It ain't hard to fucking tell.
Yeah, well,
About that.
I mean, probably depends how you define hell.
Or in the words of Joan Osborne, I had to look it up. What if God was one of us?
Hey, yeah,
had to look
it's so
that
fascinating, right? Like imagine you are that. Imagine you are that like, you know, Israeli guy pressing the button, launch the rockets, right? Blow up some fucking building, and then you get killed, and then now you get reborn as that kid that just got the fucking hospital he's in fucking bombed, and it's like now that's you. And it's like, wow, you missed the whole fucking point. The point was not,
you know, and what's fascinating about it is like this. Okay, so what I'm seeing right now with the narrative, because that's always what I'm interested in this context, is like, what is it that people are being manipulated to accept and allow? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like that whole thing with I forget the name of the guy, but there's that whole story about that guy in ancient Rome or whatever that had like the I don't know, what do you call it? Like a company where they put out fires, right?
Oh yeah. That's right.
And then he would go around and like, like you would sell them
basically
not insurance, but it was like
insurance. That's what it was.
Insurance, right? Insurance. And if you didn't want to buy it, then the idea is that he would then burn down your house and then wouldn't save it. And then he would just buy up the cheap land or whatever. Or he'd be like, hey, your house is burning down. Let me make you an offer. And so it's kind of like, what are you really being sold here? And so you look at, for example, what's going on in the news, and you got people like Lindsey Graham going on there and saying like, oh, Iran had to have known about that this was going to happen and they're giving money and so forth. And then you got people like in Canada, like the Canadian government going, none of the money that we send to Palestine goes to Hamas. None of it goes to them. It's all just going to the people. I'm like, well, I ain't seeing it. So what are you talking about? Like, I don't, so I see like the whole war with Iran, that point being pushed, but also it's like, it's interesting because if you look at how the mind control works, if you talk about the reality of the situation with Palestine and all that, people will use trying to use the logical point of, oh, you're justifying what the Hamas or whatever people did to the Israeli people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, that's how terrorism works. Like, you terrorize the people so that they will buy whatever their government is trying to sell them. That's how it's just like that thing with the fire insurance stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, you know, from what I can see, it's like they wanted to get rid of all these fucking people anyways. You know, and
who wanted to get rid of him?
Like the Israeli government.
Who wanted to get rid of who?
Israeli government wanted to get rid of Palestinians.
WHO. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, hey, whoa, buddy, whoa,
wanted to get rid of the WHO.
I'm not trying to get another strike.
The WHO was trying to get rid of the WHO from the beginning. The band.
And look,
WHO is
I
trying to get rid of
know, I don't know
everybody.
all of the facts. I'm just saying what it looks like to me,
Mhm.
right? It looks like they wanted to get rid of those people and then have their own little deal and expand it and so forth, or whatever the whole story is. And it's so what I'm seeing happening is then you've got this thing happens. It's a terrible thing. People react to it naturally. I mean, that's of course. But then that is used as the excuse to then take 1 million plus people and move them. Can you imagine? Like, it's like you can see the pictures, which I haven't looked at them, but people can look at the pictures of all the people being kidnapped and killed and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, it's so terrible. But what you don't see is the pictures of like the 1 million people who are now being denied water and food and all this stuff and being just told to get up and move, just go. You know, it's so, like imagine if it's like go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because like I was listening to that Gabor Mate clip, and he's talking about how I found what he said to be very rational, and at the same time it made me consider this point of like, okay, the story that we're all told in high school or whenever about the Holocaust is that, or if you visit the Holocaust Museum or any Holocaust museum, across the country, because there's very many of them actually, the story that we're told is the reason why we need to be told this story and why you need to visit these museums and everything is to understand the atrocities that were committed there so that they never happen again, right? And it really breaks down, here's how people can be treated. That is terrible. And, it talks about, or basically the story that you're shown, the narrative that you're shown is basically people were taken and from their homes, their businesses taken from them, they were put into concentration camps, and they were made to suffer, essentially. And many people died. And they were treated inhumanely and basically treated as less than just because of their religion, really, or their race. And this should never happen again. And then it's kind of given like a nice little neat bow of said like, hey, thankfully this doesn't happen, or when it does, or it doesn't happen as big as it happened back then. And and
what's fascinating is, okay, that point you just said, it's done so we don't do it again, right? But then if you ever go, look, that's happening right here, they go, how dare you desecrate the memory of this thing by comparing it to that? And it's like, but wasn't that the whole fucking point? Like, why is it sacred? And it's like, why is it so sacred? And so my question is it so that we don't repeat it again at all? Or is it so we don't ever assume that the people it happened to could ever do anything?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Which is not to blame anybody, but it's like, it'd be like the same thing as an American thinking that the American government can never do anything bad because we have the founding documents and the Declaration, the Constitution, and we're always right and everything we do is good. And you're like, don't question Vietnam, you don't question the Iraq War, you don't question anything because everything we do is good.
Don't question the money we just sent to Iran.
Right. You don't question the Ukraine, Russia, and all that stuff, right? And it's like, and yet at the same time, the whole reason why our system is so valuable is because you're allowed to question things.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to question things. Like you're not actually allowed to. We talk about you're allowed to, but the physical reality of it is if you say you support Palestine, the guys on Wall Street are like, give me the list of people who signed that. We don't want to hire them. And it's like, well, hold on. So you don't want to live in a country where people are free to speak what they believe, which
no, you
I'm
can
not
say,
trying to say the value of free speech.
Want, but I have the freedom to deny you rights or deny you.
I have the freedom to put you in prison. Okay. You can say whatever you want. You have free choice, but I have the right to do whatever I want to you based on what you did. It's like, what the fuck does that? Is that what we meant by we have free speech? You can say whatever you want, but the government can punish you if they want to. Okay. That'd be free speech.
Well, it's not the government punishing you. It's just the billionaire who runs the government.
It's just a billionaire who elects all those people, gives them all the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No,
wild.
but it's fascinating to me, the whole watching everyone go through the double think, right? And man, like watching now too, it's like I remember when the whole thing happened, I was watching to go like, okay, who is like the elite, like the celebrities and everybody going to support in this? Because you would think, on the one hand, the logic of it is you would support the Palestinians because they're the ones who are, quote, even if the whole thing is a lie, right? Because if it's a lie that the Palestinians are colonized and that they're oppressed and that they're in concentration camps, then is it a lie that there were kids in cages? Is it a lie that that Trump called Mexicans rapists? Is it a lie that January 6th wasn't what we were told it was? Is it a, like, which ones are the lies and which ones are not the lies?
Right.
And like, here's an example where no one's even denying. Like when they say it's an open air concentration camp, prison, whatever, for these Palestinians, I don't hear anyone going, that's not true. That's a lie. It's really not that bad. Why don't they just say that?
Well,
maybe that exists. Maybe they're all saying that.
I have heard some people saying it's not that bad. I have heard
like
that.
Who? I'm not disagreeing that you have heard that, but
just
who?
like people that I know are Jewish. Like
no, I'm talking about like the public figures.
Oh, media heads. Oh, okay.
Like maybe they are saying it, but that's not what I'm hearing. Like they're more arguing about the rationalization for it.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, well, but they're savages, or they can't live in normal modern society, and so they have, it's like, that's okay. Do you want to understand the rationalization for apartheid in South Africa?
Well,
have you ever looked at the other side as the logic, the rationalization for it, like why it was not a bad thing?
What is it? What is this?
Right? I'm not agreeing or disagreeing that it was a good or bad thing. I'm just saying, like, what is the rationalization people used that it really wasn't that bad of a deal? Yeah, the conditions might have been bad or whatever, but there was a reason for it. The rationalization was that the Black Africans in South Africa, the native people there, couldn't live alongside of white, cultured, civilized European people that were settling, whatever you want to call it there. And there's all the rationalization that the white people were developing things technologically, like they were bringing civilization to that place where before it was like people running around with spears or whatever. Okay. So that's the story. And then the rationalization is, okay, you take this savage guy who runs around in the bush, and so forth, and then you try to put him next to a bunch of white people who are like cultured and civilized. They can't get along together. Mm-hmm. There's going to be conflict. So you need to have them separated. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And look, it's not their fault that the conditions are poor for the Black people, because I mean, that's what were they doing before? They were like living in a fucking jungle or whatever. Right.
Right.
It's the same rationalization that was done with, what do you call it? Like segregation and stuff in America.
Yeah.
It's like separate but equal. It's like, yeah, it's like we don't want to be in the same place. So we have to have separate things for everybody.
What's interesting is like, it kind of reminds me of, how like people treat gypsies, like people are like openly racist towards gypsies, especially in Europe, and it's just kind of like, yeah, they don't have a home or a place. Like fucking gypsies, just like whatever, like they're less than people in a sense, but nobody really bats an eye against that, of like the way that gypsies are treated. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I was listening to somebody saying this point about, it's about the victim that is it's like fashionable, or there was a word they used, I can't remember, but I think it was like fashionable victims. So it's like right now it's like the Israelis are the fashionable victims, not the Palestinians. Or it was like Black people 2 years ago were the victims, but not these people or whatever. And so it's all, and like the Ukrainians are the fashionable victims, and then it's not about who's actual victims of anything.
Wait. Because this just reminded me. Okay, do you remember when all that the Kanye stuff was going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Which round of the Kanye stuff?
Okay.
Which I wish we could have him back on the podcast, because I want to know what he thinks about all this.
Yeah,
he's
I want to
probably
see
like,
Kanye's statement on this.
What I tell you? I told you. I tried to tell
you. Okay, all right. But I'm just thinking of like when he was saying all this stuff about like, I'm gonna go DEF CON 3 or whatever, right? And man, it's so interesting.
But isn't he kind of like the canary in the coal mine?
Like, wait.
But you know what I mean? Where he's like, hey guys, here's what happens when you say something.
Right.
Okay, now a couple years later, watch what's going to happen.
Okay, but
not even a couple years later. It was like last year, I think. Right?
When all that was going on, what was happening? All these Black artists were like, hey, you can't talk about the Jews. You know, they have done so much for us. And it was like, it was really becoming clear that like, yes, we went from this phase of like, Blacks are victims.
But we're not elite victims.
Yes, you're not the biggest victim. Here's the biggest victim here.
Hold on. You're not the victim that also, you know, was it somebody said they were talking about these coincidences, right? Mm-hmm. And like it was like last week or whatever, the Ukraine war funding got held up, and now it's like the point where they're like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not sending the money there anymore. There was like something that went on with this, right? So then in this context,
how serendipitous.
But you know what I mean? Yeah, right. And it's like you're fucking with the war machine now. That was the idea. So this type of victimhood in this context allows the war machine to continue. Same thing with the Black Lives Matter, because that was used to get Trump out. And what was Trump against? He was like, hey, we'll do some surgical strikes and we'll be specific about what we do, but we're not trying to go to war right now. And I mean, I'm sure people can make arguments so he allowed this and that, whatever. But the point is, there wasn't like clearly we're going to war. You know, would he have done the whole Ukraine-Russia thing? Given what he seemed to be doing, probably not. Yeah. He would have handled it probably differently, right? So what my point just being was the Black Lives Matter thing served its purpose. But now if you're on the side of, because Black Lives Matter is like, yeah, we're pro the Palestinians. But if you're pro the Palestinians, you're kind of saying, no, we don't need a war to solve this problem. We need to solve the problem of why these people are living in really shitty conditions.
Right.
And why is that happening? We need to solve it that way.
Which would generally be the more liberal side of things, the more like Democratic, Democrat as in the party here.
Yeah.
That's their more thinking of things is like, yeah, we need, and which is, it's so funny to me because I think when I first met you, Cam, when was that? Okay, that was like long ago, right? 2013-ish, around there, 2014, right?
Something like that.
It was so funny because around that time, I think from like all the people that you spent time with on the Destiny Farm and all of that, right? They probably would have perceived you as liberal, right? And Democrat or whatever, right? Like those leanings anyway. And then leading up to Trump, it was like all of a sudden in, you know, the eyes of everyone else, all of a sudden you're conservative, whatever, right? But and then like people get so confused because they want to put you into this label of you're this or you're that, or us as a group in our way of thinking. They want to put us in a label of, oh, clearly you guys are all conservative. Clearly you guys are all Republican or whatever. And so then you should go with these talking points and all this. And it's funny because we're just on the side of like life of like, okay, what is
actually best?
For all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It's easy to make decisions when it's not easy because there's still the emotional points you have to process, but
yeah.
But you can look at it objectively and be like, okay, what will be best here? It's like not about blame. Like, oh, you're siding with this side or that side. I'm like, dude, fuck violence in any form.
Right.
And I'm not even like, well, what else could they do? Because like some people are like, what else could they do? I'm like, you could say what else could they do, but does it solve anything?
Right.
It doesn't solve anything. And you say, well, but they're getting attention to it. So now all I see happening from it is the system that knows how to market and sell a story is going to use it for whatever it was going to do. It was already ready for it. So whether you think it was allowed to happen, whether you think it happened on purpose by the other side, or whether you think it was just a thing that they didn't know about, the system was there to be like, all right, and let's use this conflict and get all these emotions. And we already know what we want to do with it.
Yeah.
And whether people realize it or not, it's just going right into the WEF, all that agenda, all of that. It's just leading us all into that point more and more and more.
you look at the all these like pro-Palestinian rallies it's been fascinating to see on Twitter, like in all these city centers, right? Times Square, London, there's these really big gatherings. And you just think, wow, if I wanted to get everyone into a state of wanting security over everything, I would love to have these large gatherings, and I would love for something to happen that makes them all go, oh, okay, please, you can take my freedoms. Just
fuck
make me safe.
protesting, like, you know, and we already said it's not the solution.
You know what it's like? It's like you want to create this really big project, but it costs a lot of money. And so you gotta like really come up with all the money. So you go to a bunch of people and you share a story with them to get them excited enough to give you their money. But the money in this case or the currency is energy, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of energy to make big moves, right? It costs a lot of energy. Okay, I want to do this. Everybody says no. Okay, but if I get you in the right energetic state, then everyone will say yes.
It's like a way of getting consent.
Yeah.
It's like energetic consent, you know? And so it's like that whole idea you always hear about where it's like, well, they have to tell you what they're doing. You know, it's like the vampire has to get permission to come in your home. It's like, okay, so you're the one who fucking let them in, right? So it's like this sort of consent point that they have to do. And it wouldn't be possible if you were not distracted by your emotions. And that's the point I think you were making earlier also of like, we can look at the points and it doesn't mean you can't make a mistake, but you have to then look with self-honesty. Was I going into an emotional reaction?
We're not making our decisions based on, I identify as a Trump supporter. Like what? Like who cares?
It's just fucking stupid.
I'll tell you, I really enjoyed living here during the lockdowns because DeSantis for the most part, kept a lot of that stuff at bay. He was like, "No, we're not doing that. We're not doing this." Right now, today, I'm like, I look at this guy he's now apparently running for president, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what are you're choosing to side with this and that, and you're fucking it all up. Come back here and do what you were doing before. But it's
actually, you know what's cool about this too is it's exposing everybody too, because there was a lot of people who were getting all like, yeah, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's going to be the one, and then he comes out and is like, you know, essentially saying Israel, whatever they're going to do is justified.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people going like, wait, what the fuck? Yeah. What the hell, man? I had high hopes for this. It's like, right. Yeah. Stop fucking having hopes based on anything less than the person talking about what is actually best.
Yes.
And being willing to be self-honest about the situation. Like, how come we can't say the Palestinians are in a fucked situation and it is not best for them? And also, neither are the Israeli people. And it's not about you have to blame. It's like no one is walking the process of actually looking at what is best. They're still holding on to religion. They're still holding on to that. If you took the religion and the God out of it, like, why would there be any dispute? And someone was making this point, maybe it was the Gabor Mate or somebody, where they were like, if you look at it, the Palestinian people were the ones who never left that area. Yeah. So they're probably the most related to the actual Hebrew people who were there than anybody else. So who are they fighting? They're fighting themselves. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like it's like a division in the mind based on, and then people have the audacity to be like, all religions really have a seed of truth and they're all really common. And that's why we should allow freedom of religion. And it's actually really great. And it's like, it never has produced the one thing it's claiming to produce, which is peace on earth.
Right.
It never has produced that ever.
It's abdicating responsibility.
Well, it's not because of our religion, it's because of their religion. It's like, I thought your religion is essentially the same as theirs. So why do you allow it?
Yeah. I thought there was a seed of truth in their religion.
Yeah. It's just a giant fucking abdication of responsibility. Because when people say God, what is inherent within that is, well, something else is responsible. It's like, fuck that.
You know what's crazy?
Irresponsible.
Is the response by the people is, or by a lot of people in our media, is literally annihilate them, end them, like completely decimate them.
Now, what's fascinating about that is like, but that's justified, right? Because they did something first.
first, really.
And it's like, well, okay, what if you did
Where's the
something before
forgiveness?
that? What if you did something before that? It's like, huh? What are you talking about? You're just totally sympathizing with terrorists. Like you're saying it's justified. It's like, no, it's like, is this the solution? And then you start looking at the political, you look at the political arena, and what I look at is like, okay, it's a chessboard. They wanted this thing here. They wanted to move that there. Lindsey Graham's going on Fox News going, you know what we need to do? Because obviously Iran knew what was happening. The first thing we need to do is we need to bomb their oil fields. Like, dude, like you're not supposed to say that out loud. Like that's like the secret part. I thought it wasn't about oil. Like, come on, like it's like bomb their oil. It's like, oh shit, fuck. Oh, that was the part. I wasn't supposed to. It's like the stage notes,
Yeah.
It's like in the parentheses. You're like, oh, whoops.
It's so funny because like I saw him say that a couple of times, and I was just like, so it's really just all about oil and money. It's all we need to cripple their oil fields and cripple their their economy. Like, oh, okay. So you just like, obviously this is the same thing that happened in 9/11, the same thing that happened with the Saddam Hussein stuff, all of that, the weapons of,
they couldn't see this attack coming.
Right.
Enough. I mean, and then now like detailed reports of like Egypt and US will warn them that something was going to happen. So you can say, well, they did know it was coming. Okay, well then it should have been stopped. But let's just pretend like they didn't see it coming, but somehow they know Iran was behind it. Just like they knew Iraq was behind 9/11. Somehow. It was like, it made no fucking sense.
Right. It's like, it's funny because it's literally the pattern has become so obvious to me that I'm almost like, well, does anybody else is it possible to not see this pattern?
We spent the last how many years telling everybody that they're racist and that they have unconscious bias.
Yeah.
And then the moment that you're manipulated based on your actual racism, you don't see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, these fucking Muslim, pieces of whatever, it's like, they're just savages. It's like, dude, like you're actually being racist right now and being manipulated by it.
Right.
They cannot see that.
Right. It's so interesting, just this whole thing that's going on. Like, and just the points of, okay, you literally, you know how we opened up like, oh, you guys remember about Ukraine? That far off thing? Literally just before that, what was there? The COVID thing where you were lied to. Literally just before that, there's all these things that we can clearly look back on and see we were lied to. They made it a point to put all this stuff out in the media, quell any, or not quell, but squash any opposition to that narrative, then later admitted to lying, but the damage is already done and nobody gives a fuck. How are you not catching on to this pattern yet?
Lack of fucking education.
Like clearly lack of processing ability.
Yeah. But then that's on us, right? It's on us who know.
Did I send you guys that video, that Lex Friedman, where he was talking to the guy about intelligence? It was like the one about the bell curve.
I didn't watch
that one.
I did not watch that.
I think I sent one about biology too. But
I'm starting that one. That one's fucking cool.
It is cool, man.
Like biology and AI are actually, well, yeah.
We can come back to that, but the point was, it's just a quick point. Like the guy was talking about, they were talking about intelligence. How do you define it? What is it specifically versus what is IQ exactly? All these different things. And it was cool because what they really came down to was like, it's about processing. Mm-hmm. It's about processing ability. That's what we mean by intelligence. So I'm like, it's funny. Max has been playing a lot of chess, and he likes to, he's really into like variants and like creating chess variants, or you have like different pieces with different rules and all this stuff. But he was playing because like now, by the way, chess computers are at the point where like no human could fucking beat them. Like in a normal game of chess without time limit, or like relatively like 30-minute game, like you're just never going to beat the computer. It's just beyond humans, right?
Yeah.
To the point where they know when humans are cheating, because they're like, oh, you're playing a perfect game. That's not possible. Like you're clearly doing the moves of what a computer is telling you to do. And that's how they'll go back and analyze games and be like, that person was cheating, and they'll ban them from like these chess websites and stuff.
Damn.
Well, anyways, Max has been playing, he plays like some bot that's rated like 3,200, which is like, impossible. It's like beyond any human even possibility, right?
Yeah.
But he beats it because what he does is he'll play it in 1 minute blitz games.
Okay.
And he'll beat it every time
to analyze. Oh,
he just explained, because I've seen him beat it over and over and over. And he just explained to me, he's like, and I don't know how he knew this. Maybe it was explained to him on something he's watching. I'm not sure, but he's like, computers are not really good in this context of making decisions fast.
Wow. Weird.
So he's like beating these like impossible. Like if he played this, I mean, if Magnus Carlsen played this bot at a normal game, they're never going to win, right? And so he's able, because he just moves his pieces and he just like quickly he just moves it, move without, and then the computer can't. It's like the computer. I don't know how they're programmed exactly, but I'm assuming it's playing as if it's got this strategy, this long-term strategy that he's going to beat you. But if you can run the clock out, it's a draw. It's just you win on time. It's not a draw. It's like you actually won because you won on time.
Right. Okay.
So that the rules of like a blitz game of like a 1 minute or 5 minute game is if you can checkmate them, you can stalemate them, or actually not stalemate. That would be a draw, right?
Yeah.
You can checkmate them. They can resign, or you could win on time, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that was just a cool point. Now Mitch left. I wanted to talk about the biology thing.
I don't even know about it. So.
No, let me think for a second. They were talking about, it was some stuff I had never really heard about. And he was talking about, robots, but in the context of living cells.
Okay.
Living cells as robots. And he made this point about like, and I was kind of like half listening because I was also like doing I was clearing brush off of this trail or whatever. But there was this one part I remember where he was saying how they'll take these cells, which are like, let's say it's a cell from your arm, right? So it's like a skin cell or something, whatever. It has a certain function, but they take it out of that context and they somehow they set up the situation where it can't just automatically go into that. Oh, Mitch is back. Mitch, do you remember that part? I don't know if you got there on the biology one where they were talking about they would take the cells out of their natural environment. And they would
I'm like 10 minutes in only. So
okay. And they would like put them in a different environment where it couldn't just do automatically, like if it's a skin cell, like automatically behave in the way it would work if it was like integrated into your body.
Oh,
and
wow.
They'll start doing this other behavior and start acting as like a multi-celled organism or something, essentially.
Oh,
like they'll start acting completely different.
Man, and everyone should listen to that shit. Well, get TechnoTutor and then listen to it because you won't fucking process it without it.
It was cool because he was showing how we have this idea that there's a central directing intelligence, and then like the cells are basically just like dumb. But and he said like the actual intelligence is a collective intelligence. It's like the collection of cells have an emergent, intelligent, like, go ahead.
Isn't that like God? The old version is like God is the central thing and humans are just like, following that. When what we're actually taking it to is every single person is God as creator, and we emerge with something better than we've ever seen. Because
but let me drive that point real quick. I'm going to find that podcast. See if I can find that section, because they usually do a pretty good job of have you ever typed YouTube into YouTube?
No. Damn, dude, that's fucking meta.
That is meta. Oh no, that's Facebook.
Oh, have you ever put meta into YouTube?
Hold on one second. Okay, so what was the guy called?
Levin. Michael Levin.
You're good.
Fucking natural learning ability. Wide open now.
Okay, let me real quick find the sense of self. Okay, sense of self.
Yeah, because he was. I don't want to derail you, but just the very interesting thing he says early on in the interview. He goes, when people go, "Oh, it's just physics," it's physics, and they like identify it just as the realm of physics, but they're not realizing it's related to biology and mathematics and everything. Well, it's like
the point there was when they're studying cognition, and then they say something like, "Oh, well, that's not true cognition. That's just physics at play." And he's trying to show at any level you do it, there is no, here's true cognition. And then it's like, it's all just physics. He's like, what do you expect if you take something apart and you look at the underlying mechanics? What else do you think it's going to be? So there's this belief in the intelligence being something, it's like your soul. It has an intelligence with it, and that's what's directing it. Let me just play let me think, what was the point I was going to make? It was going to be about the point you brought up about God.
Yeah, as some intelligence outside.
So let's imagine, and I'm gonna see if I can have him also back this up with the way he was explaining it. But imagine if you thought you have to have a central directing intelligence that serves as that point, and it cannot be it cannot come from a collective point. Then you would believe that you need a God. And so as humanity, we believe we need a God. We need the government. We need something to direct us as the central point of authority, instead of it being, can we all take self-responsibility? And through that, collectively, an intelligence can emerge that also organizes things. And because that's what they're arguing is actually happening in physical organisms. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, that's so cool. Because
let me see if I can.
That's the fucking solution.
Here, let me see if this is it.
We can't hear
sharing sound.
Oh, let me do that again.
We could impersonate him. Hey guys, don't be fucking stupid.
Okay.
Oh, well, then that's not real cognition. That's just physics. And I think this is fundamentally flawed, because if you zoom into anything, what are you going to see? Of course, you're just going to see physics. What else could be underneath, right? It's not going to be fairy dust. It's going to be physics and chemistry. But that doesn't take away from the magic of the fact that there are certain ways to arrange that physics and chemistry, and in particular the bioelectricity, which I like a lot, to give you an emergent collective with goals and preferences and memories and anticipations that do not belong to any of the subunits. So I think what we're getting into here, and we can talk about how this happens during embryogenesis and so on, what we're getting into is the origin of of a self. Yeah, with a capital S. So we ourselves, there are many other kinds of selves, and we can tell some really interesting stories about where selves come from and how they become unified.
Yeah, is this the first, or at least humans tend to think that this is the level at which the self with a capital S is first born. But, and we really don't want to see human civilization or Earth itself as one living organism.
Yeah.
That's very uncomfortable to us.
It is, yeah.
Which, if you read the Asimov books, at the very end, they have this concept called Gaia, which is like...
Whoa. I'm not there yet.
Well, I didn't say anything other than that.
You don't watch Gaia, Drake?
But
come on.
Where's the self born?
We have to grow up past that. So what I like to do is, I'll tell you two quick stories about that. I like to roll backwards. So as opposed to, so if you start and you say, okay, here's a paramecium, and you see it, it's a single cell organism. You see it doing various things, and people will say, okay, I'm sure there's some chemical story to be told about how it's doing it. So that's not true cognition, right? And people will argue about that. I like to work it backwards. I say, let's agree that you and I, as we sit here, are examples of true cognition. If anything, if there's anything that's true cognition, we are examples of it. Now let's just roll back slowly, right? So you roll back to the time when you were a small child and used to doing whatever, and then just sort of day by day you roll back, and eventually you become more or less that paramecium, and then you sort of even below that, right, as an unfertilized oocyte. So no one has, to my knowledge, no one has come up with any convincing discrete step at which my cognitive powers disappear, right? It just doesn't, the biology doesn't offer any specific step. It's incredibly smooth and slow and continuous. And so I think this idea that it just sort of magically shows up at one point, and then humans have true selves that don't exist elsewhere, I think it runs against everything we know about evolution, everything we know about developmental biology. These are all slow continua. And the other really important story I want to tell is where embryos come from. So think about this for a second. Amniote embryos, so this is humans, birds, and so on, mammals and birds and so on. Imagine a flat disk of cells. So there's maybe 50,000 cells. And in that, so when you get an egg from a fertilized, let's say you buy a fertilized egg from a farm, right? That egg will have about 50,000 cells in a flat disk. It looks like a little tiny little frisbee. And in that flat disk, what'll happen is there'll be one set of cells will will become special, and it will tell all the other cells, I'm going to be the head, you guys don't be the head. And so it'll amplify symmetry breaking, amplification, you get one embryo. There's some neural tissue and some other stuff forms. Now you say, okay, I had one egg and one embryo, and there you go. What else could it be? Well, the reality is, and I did all of this as a grad student. If you take a little needle and you make a scratch in that blastoderm, in that disc, such that the cells can't talk to each other for a while, it heals up, but for a while they can't talk to each other. What'll happen is that both regions will decide that they can be the embryo, and there will be two of them. And then when they heal up, they become conjoined twins. And you can make two, you can make three, you can make lots. So the question of how many selves are in there cannot be answered until it's actually played all the way through. It isn't necessarily that there's just one. There can be many. So what you have is you have this medium, this undifferentiated. I'm sure there's a psychological version of this somewhere that I don't know the proper terminology, but you have this like ocean of potentiality. You have these thousands of cells, and some number of individuals are going to be formed out of it. Usually one, sometimes zero, sometimes several. And they form out of these cells because a region of these cells organizes into a collective that will have goals that individual cells don't have. For example, make a limb, make an eye. How many eyes? Well, exactly two. So individual cells don't know what an eye is. They don't know how many eyes you're supposed to have, but the collective does. The collective has goals and memories and anticipations that the individual cells don't.
I mean, I could just keep watching it, but
That's good.
it's fascinating because the point, when you study destiny, there's this point that Bernard makes a lot, which is your mind, your consciousness is a function of your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's being projected by your body. It's like at a certain point, it emerges when you have enough vocabulary as a property of your collective organism. That's not who you are. It's just a property of your body.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that is because people put so much emphasis on consciousness, where then they spiritualize it. And then they think that your consciousness continues, but they can't even really define what consciousness truly is, because you're defining it as something other than what it actually is for it to be that.
Yeah.
They're looking for the concept of you as a being, what that is, but it's not your consciousness. So anyways, it's kind of a tangent, but
well, in the same way,
really...
the idea of God emerges, right? But if it's done without the right starting point, you start to think, oh, God is something outside myself and whatever, where you've created God, but you think God created you. When in reality, the thing that made you is the baseline physical reality. It is you, but then you trap yourself into separating from it.
Yeah. And also the point of the God that emerges is a property of the individuals in the collective and the intelligence that's within them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like what's happening right now is we're trying to, as a society, we're trying to engineer a technological God. We're trying to engineer a technological system that will control us and direct us, because nobody actually believes in God anymore. In the sense of it directs your behavior.
Yeah, no one believes in God anymore, but also no one understands God.
Well, I just mean the argument of in the past, people didn't commit crime. Yeah.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I'm just saying but that point of nobody understands God, so they need to create a God that is technology. Instead
of realizing that, which is the projection of the mind.
Right.
Instead of it being let's program ourselves and create a system so that you can program yourself to understand reality directly, to have principles that are best for everybody. Imagine if each cell is in your body is I want the best outcome for me and all the other cells. That would make obvious. That's what you would expect to happen, right?
What's so
but why don't we see it that way? Instead, we go yeah, but we
this
need to
cell's
have
a victim to this cell, and my version of our cells is better.
You can't even do that, because you got to have God. You got to have a God that overrides any of that stuff. And that's what we're seeing right now play out. Literally. All this stuff is about religion. And it isn't actually about religion, and yet religion enables this stuff to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. It's not
So-
about religion because the people at the top, they don't care. About
It's only about religion to the masses because they're
Right.
distracted in like their emotions and their religion. They're distracted by that. And they're like, yes, we do need to hate the Israelis because they're not Muslims. And yes, we do.
Here's what's also really fascinating about that is that there are a lot of Jews who are atheists, you know, like, and still it's the point of, it's still the same points that are being used to justify what's going on. You know,
Hmm.
like it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily matter that they believe, quote unquote, in God or not. It's
Which
the-
makes no sense. That whole, anyways. That's a
Yeah,
whole
right.
topic.
Yeah.
But it's the culture is really what's permeating the thinking, right? It's, and which is, again, you can, we talked about this last week about base English, right? Like everyone should have like some basic understanding of English was the idea behind what Ogden was thinking when he created base English, right? And what's so funny is George Orwell, who wrote 1984, was a strong like he agreed with it for a while, and then in 1944 he changed his stance and he was like, no, this is not what I think should happen, because he became very concerned with the idea of everybody speaking one language and that being manipulated. And then when he created 1984, it was basically that double speak and all that, the newspeak, that's what it was called, newspeak, was based on base English. And he was making a commentary on that of like, here's what would happen if we all, but it's interesting that he did that way, because it's like, that's obviously a limited version.
Yeah.
Well, but he also addressed it because in the book, the inner party members, they knew more than that.
Right.
They had nuanced ideas and so forth, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's more like if there's still a level of inequality.
Yeah.
So the problem isn't that the language needs to be, everyone has their own language and it was because there's one language. That wasn't the problem. The problem
Right.
was that there's still an inequality where everyone wasn't like, it's still an elite determining what everybody thinks.
Yes.
So, okay, let's look at the world right now. There's lots of languages.
Yeah.
Is it any fucking different than what he
No.
said? It's no fucking different. And in
No.
fact, if everybody had mastered English, it'd be like to the point we're talking about, which is he didn't understand the actual physical integration point. He just understood the mind.
Right.
So it's
okay.
like irrelevant.
So on that point of the mind, super interesting, because like you said, what we're creating, what society is creating, or they're trying to create, is a technological God, right? Which would be based on the mind, a projection of the mind. As in, when you look at your social media, that is a reflection, or basically a mirror image of what's going on in your mind, where you have all these thoughts, it's not reality, and you're so entertained by that and not here in the physical.
Keep fucking scrolling all day. Addicted
Right.
to it.
And that's what we do in our minds. That's what we've been doing in our minds. And now we have an external like image of what that looks like. Like, oh wow, that's what's happening in my mind. That's why we gravitate towards it so much. It's just like, yeah. But then here's the really cool part. I've been listening to on Equoff of how the mind is really just a reflection of us as beings, what we had already accepted and allowed. Right. And so that's really fascinating to me, because it's like, oh, it's not something that's happening to you. This is who we were acting as before we came here, before we were on this planet, born this way, and in this physical form. This is who we were acting as our minds, basically. All the things
It's
that our
really just
minds-
separation and inequality.
Right. Separation, inequality, wanting to not accept anything different, like being to the point where we'll reject something that we don't see ourselves as, right? That separation and inequality point. If we feel we're separated from this, then we reject it, without recognizing that all of this is a part of us. So this whole point with all the cells is like all of the physical is a part of us. That is, I remember these conversations we would have, Cam, like long ago, where you would say like, okay, well, what is life? Is a rock life? And I'd be like, no, we learn in chemistry that rocks are not life because they're inorganic matter, right? Like, okay, well, what does that mean, right? So you're saying if no rocks existed, we would still be able to exist? No, that wouldn't work. Everything that's here is a part of life, and it plays some role. And there's an audio I was listening to of Bernard where he's talking about, someone asked, will there be chemicals in a world where there's equal money? Like, will chemicals still exist? And he's like, okay, your definition of a chemical is biased. Right. Everything is a chemical. You have chemicals running through you. Like, literally everything is a chemical. So your idea,
that's like being like, I only eat organic food. And it's like, so that's why I don't eat polyunsaturated fats or whatever. And you're like, do you know what the carbon chain is? Do you know what organic means? Like, it's literally a fucking processed fucking seed oil is organic.
Right.
If you understand what organic means.
Yeah.
So it's a marketing term, right? So the same thing with chemicals. Like, I don't want chemicals in my shampoo. So you don't want water in it.
Right. Water is a chemical. Yeah. That all just comes right back to education, and we've been
and how you learn the word as an emotional point. Like, imagine your parent being like, oh no, I don't want to get that. There's too many chemicals in it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So you're learning that word, like, oh, chemical must not be good. We don't want chemicals.
Right. And that's what we see in like media and all of that stuff, right? But like, we've been educated in a way where we are separate from everything else. We separate ourselves from other people because you're this skin color and that skin color.
Your intelligence has become separated from your body. You see what I'm saying? That's my point earlier. It's like, you think that your intelligence is some inherent thing, not realizing it's a function of your body. And if you program each body effectively, they will all have an effective intelligence that would contribute to the whole intelligence being effective. You wouldn't need God anymore. Like, God doesn't work anyways, but it's a symptom of everyone being dumb.
Yeah.
It's a symptom. Like, you can't, and this is the problem with atheists. You can't go around telling everybody not to believe in God, because that's not the same thing as everybody being intelligent. Atheists are just as dumb as everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now all the atheists are like, stand with Israel and all this, like, just playing into the point of war, essentially.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's the whole theme throughout this conversation, it keeps coming back to that concept of like the will to forgive. It's like the thing that we're missing is real forgiveness for ourselves and for what we've all accepted and allowed. But like physical forgiveness, not mind forgiveness. And that's the part where, like,
explain more what you mean. Give more context.
Well, it's so it's like,
because somebody listening to it could be like, oh yeah, I do Ho'oponopono. I forgive all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
I recite the chant.
Yeah. It's like you're saying, it's like this whole thing is us, we're all the same thing, technically. We're life. We're all a being, we're an individual expression of that. Now we've accepted and allowed ourselves to be less than equal to others. And that plays out, whether it be in all the shit happening here in America, overseas, right? Israel, Palestine. It's like we are forgetting that we are equal, that we can actually work together. Also, we look at God, right? And people go, oh, well, God is better than me, or God has it all figured out, and I just do my part, whatever. When in reality, we all have this ability, a will to forgive. So you can forgive first yourself, but then also within that is like, we can all collectively start to forgive what we've allowed. And that is a way forward in here where we can now start to see, oh, this shit that I thought was real, or this shit that I thought was important, or these things that I valued, I can actually forgive that, let that go. And then that allows a opening to then start to realize a new way of being. And without the forgiveness, it's not possible to do the new way of being. How could it be?
I want to add this in here because it's kind of like, we have created ourselves to be this, and it seems like a structure, very much like you can imagine all those cells are identical at first, and then one group of the cells says, okay, now I'm the head, you don't be the head, everybody else, you do other things. And then that forgiveness is like, okay, so you created this thing, and it's like, it turns out, it's not what you wanted, actually. It's like, it's deformed body, whatever. The forgiveness is, in a sense, if you could imagine, being able to turn those cells back into the original cell where they can, okay, let's let go of, I have to be this deformed body, but we can now reassemble ourselves as something that is better, something that is best, something that makes sense, right? And so I don't want to put the idea that like, oh, we can just wipe the slate clean and everything like that. It's not exactly like that, but it is a reshaping of how we've formed ourselves, right? There are consequences that we will still have to face and we cannot avoid, that we've created. To say that that would not exist would be pretty much akin to saying like nothing matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and people will get wrapped up like, oh, I can turn myself into a lizard or something. And it's like, no, it's not the practical reality of it. It's like, let's just focus on the basic points that actually matter. Like this, like, can we reshape our society? Let's not even worry about, can I grow an extra limb? You know what I mean? It's like, that's what we're focused on. Like, oh, a robot can then do all this. They're talking about robots and all these extra things that we can do. And it's like, what about, we're getting all hyped up on ChatGPT can give me recipes. And it's like, you're not even worried if the fucking Palestinian kids have like proper nutrition.
Right.
And like this whole point about,
can they give me
and here's the thing about the terrorism point is it's being used to just like ignore. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is terrible. Like, so yes, it's terrible, but what's under the surface of it? What is that word being used specifically? Because if the Palestinian people said, or if somebody said like, if Black Lives Matter said the US government are terrorists, like people would laugh that off because it's not the mainstream saying it. It's not, you know what I mean? But it's used very specifically in a way so you won't look under the surface. And when we talk about, how many kids die every day of starvation, like here's an example. And here's an example where a government is like literally going, you know what, we're going to cut off water, we're going to cut off internet, we're going to cut off all these points, and you have to leave.
Hey, isn't that interesting?
For those people, can you imagine 1 million people, and they're like, you have to leave now. You have to leave where everything you know, and just get up and go. And like, are you ever going to be able to come back? What do you think? Are they going to let them come back?
No.
And no one cares about that. And it's like, even saying it, it's like, oh, well, that sounds like some kind of conspiracy theory. Why? Why is that a conspiracy? Why is it not a conspiracy theory that, how do you even fucking know? Which I'm not saying it didn't happen, but how do you know it happened? Well, I saw the videos and the text messages and like, didn't we just spend 6 months fucking telling you about AI and deep fakes and like fucking AI generated shit and like all this stuff? I'm not saying it didn't happen. But what I'm saying is, what do you know? How do you know what is real and what's not that you didn't directly experience? And what I'm saying is, then don't go, well, the whole idea that they're in some concentration, that sounds like conspiracy theory. You don't, it's like, you don't fucking know what's real. You're on here liking Instagram models that they're totally filtered and fucking, it's all fake.
I was just thinking at this point while you were saying that, of like, isn't it interesting how terrorists can only be, a government can't be a terrorist.
Yeah, by definition, it's like
marginalized.
It can still terrorize people,
but they're not terrorists.
right? And we'll even say these platitudes of like, well, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter and stuff, but you don't actually believe that.
Right.
You don't believe it when you fear losing something. Because there's a lot of people who are too afraid. It's like they're afraid of someone thinking they agree with a terrorist attack happening. They're afraid somebody might say that that's what you're doing, when in reality they don't agree with it. But they're like, there's a bad situation here. This is driving this point, and we should talk about this bad situation. And they'll use, it's like the same point of like, it's like with the whole racism thing and all that stuff. It's like, if you talk about how all these black kids are growing up without fathers, it's like, oh, you're racist. And you're saying, it's like, well, I don't want anyone to think I'm racist, so I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
When in reality, you're talking about it because you have empathy with those people and you do see them as equally valuable. And that's why you're fucking talking about it, because it's like, I posted that video of, it was that woman talking about divorce, how it's like really bad for kids or whatever. And this woman commented on it of like, you know, I'm not even going to watch this because of this clickbait title. And, you know, why is this is probably just another like shaming single parents. And why is there needs to be more talking about how to turn that situation into a positive than a negative. And I'm like,
wait, can I guess?
You're literally go ahead.
I bet she was single. I bet she was divorced.
I mean, I would assume so. I don't know.
Or it's a fucking bot.
Yeah, but my point is just like, first of all, you're talking to a man. So
pipe down.
I don't care if you think I'm making you feel ashamed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a woman. Yeah. It's like, that's a very feminine thing of like, well, I don't want this person to feel ashamed. Like, you should feel ashamed. If you're some guy and you have kids and you're still watching porn, you should feel ashamed.
You should. Fucking lose.
Like, to the point where you change, not you should just keep doing it and feel ashamed. Like, I mean, that shame that you feel is a valuable thing.
In that interview, there was a quote that was said that was that how did he say it? He said like basically the empathy that you feel by not addressing these points is being built on the suffering of those you supposedly empathize with. Right. It's like, it's obvious.
Imagine someone going like, oh, you're committing a genocide by saying that. And it's like, what? It's like, because you're trying to eliminate the existence of single parents. It's like, there's a difference between preventing a problem and literally going and murdering those people. And no one is suggesting that. Do you know what I mean? Like the point about the trans thing. Let's support people not to be trans, not to go and hurt people who are now trans. Like, come on, that's fucking retarded.
Right. But like, that's
like you're erasing their existence. It's like, if you mean by supporting them to not identify as that, then you didn't hurt anybody. Like, what are you talking about?
Erased the whole trans
That's like
identity.
saying if you support someone to stop smoking pot, that's like saying you killed a pot smoker. Right. It's like, no, they don't exist anymore because they stopped. The person still exists. Okay. Like, let's get it clear. Right?
But isn't that a clear representation of like how we identify with these personalities and we
the fucking like, mind, consciousness.
Exactly. It's
that's not who you are.
It's not who you are. But society says, hey, you're killing a pot smoker. By telling them not to smoke.
And think about it. It's when we say society says it, it's a fucking artificial intelligence that we created that's coming back at us, fucking with us because we didn't take yourself responsibility. That's all it is. It's some AI. And everything is AI. Yeah. Like your child is an AI.
Triggered.
You're not special because you're a victim. You're not special because you're a Jew. That you're not God's chosen people. You're just a human being who was programmed with certain things.
You're also not special.
And like that point, Gabor Mate or whoever was making is like these people who are there, these Palestinians are probably genetically basically exactly the same.
Yeah, they're probably
like cousins.
Yeah, like exactly. Like
they're probably cousins. So it's like, it's bullshit. This whole fucking thing. Your religion doesn't make you special, because if you believe it does, you're giving permission to the fucking terrorists because they believe their religion gives them permission for shit. It's like, when are we going to grow up past this?
It's not actually taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. And then realizing, okay, we're all programmable.
Mm-hmm.
So what should we program ourselves with?
Right.
Obviously with what's best. Like
Right.
that's the only thing that
Actually
makes
create
sense.
fucking heaven on earth.
Because otherwise you're allowing for the delay of heaven on earth
Mm-hmm.
and causing more suffering.
Right.
Which should really be the point that people look at, instead of like, oh, you're committing a genocide against the trans. It's like you're allowing genocide to continue every single day.
Yes. Unless you're actively standing for the solution.
Yeah.
And as a final point, it's like these things are only going to increase. So what Bernard explained, because you understand the nature of the mind and it's not being directed effectively and no one's considering what's best. Like you put people in a situation where they're just totally controlled and have no freedom. Actually, what do you think is going to happen? And I'm saying that from the perspective of not justifying anything, but if we allow our entire society to become some fucking AI robot controlled fucking police surveillance state where we own nothing and we're apparently happy, what do you think is going to happen?
Oh, hey, on that point of happiness, man, there's something said about that. It was something to the effect of we pursue pleasure. We allow ourselves to pursue pleasure, but that's not the same as being, I don't remember what the exact word was, but it was like, it's not the same as actually having the intrinsic or.
Let me rephrase it. Jerking off ain't self-fulfillment.
Exactly.
Okay.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. Oh, wow. That was so eloquent.
Yes,
Hey,
thank you.
put
So
that on a
amazing.
poster board.
Yeah. but okay, so that's what they mean by happiness is the jerking off.
Yeah.
Like just pursuing pleasure. But that's not the same as actually being happy or being fulfilled or being like actually like I feel like I know that what I'm doing is best. I know that I'm
Because
satisfied.
it stands absolute because you can see, wow, this like these actions I'm taking and what I'm doing actually has no, let's say, negative consequence. It's like you can stand absolute with it. Whereas even this religion thing, right, and praying to God and doing your fucking daily prayers,
It clearly doesn't save everybody from the fucking.
It's like jerking off.
Yeah.
You know what fulfillment is? You know what the definition of fulfillment is? Completed to perfection.
A fulfillment for the win.
Right?
Real fucking fulfillment.
Yeah. Like real, like
self-fulfillment is self-perfection.
That's what we're here to do. Like,
yeah, literally. That's
like,
and it's cool too because it's what we are doing and what we have been doing.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing more people too. Like we've hit another wave of local people here that are like, holy, like I've been fucking looking for you people. They're like, I'm searching this type of group. I'm searching this type of group. They're not out there. And it's really cool. There's
and they're using the tools and they're getting the deeper point.
Exactly.
It's not just, it's like they're coming in. I know you want to add to it, but it's just like what I'm observing is like coming in and then not just staying on the surface and then being like, oh, screw this. Like, it's like actually like, oh no, where it's really at is the actual fucking point, you know?
Right. It is the true fulfillment because that's what people deep down fucking want. But it's just so covered up with all this shit. And they're like, no, I actually just want this energy. I just want to fucking accept shit the way it is. But it's like when you actually take it on fully and you go through.
Like, have you ever binged
so
an entire Netflix series and then felt fulfilled after?
You feel depleted.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, that's not really what you, in the moment, you might think you want it because you're just trying to escape something, but that's not really what you want.
Whoa. You talking shit about me watching Last Kingdom, so I'm enlightening my understanding of God, Cameron.
Yeah, no, definitely talking.
I'm not trying to take away your Danes, okay?
No, it's shit's so funny because we could watch max one episode, and I'm like, okay, that's enough.
No, but my point is, it's not about escape for you guys. And it's one thing about relaxing and enjoying something. Well, it's like when people do it as a starting point of, like look at it this way. I'm talking to the average person. What are you creating with your life? Or are you just going to work to have enough money so you can pay for your Netflix and then you just spend most of your time watching?
Right, just fucking consume. See, what's funny for me and Jess is we actually had to set aside time to fucking like unplug and relax. Because
Right.
like the other week when I wasn't here, I think it was last weekend or 2 weekends ago, whatever, it was like we had not actually taken a vacation for us to unplug in 3 years. And so it was like, oh, wow, this is fucking great. I took like a day and a half off. I was like, wow. And so, because every time I go on a fucking trip, I end up just like working or like we're building stuff, which is cool. But in the same way, is like, oh, we actually were like, hey, let's just enjoy watching something together, enjoying the storyline, talking about it, whatever. And it's cool because we'll be going through, we'll pause it, we'll be like, hey, we're like, we should use that in the story here because that would be, and it's like, we still use it constructively because we're working on creating a fucking heaven on earth.
No, what this just made me think of is like you'll own nothing and be happy. They've made pleasure so cheap in both meanings of that word, right? And you know, the meaning of like it's inexpensive, but also it is cheap as in like it's not
valuable.
Exactly, not valuable at all, really. It's not sturdy. And so pleasure has become this cheap commodity because why? You've got to fucking be a slave, right? You got to work. And like you just said, you're working to make just enough money so you can pay for Netflix, just enough money in other words, just enough so that you can afford these cheap pleasures and not build anything for real. Not
okay. So instead of you own nothing and you'll be happy, it's you will understand everything and you'll be fulfilled.
I like
you'll
that.
take full responsibility.
We will understand everything and we will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the whole I and you.
That's a good point. It's they say
like
you.
We.
Yeah,
it's like we will understand everything and we will be fulfilled.
There you go.
Who could argue with that? They're like, well, what do you mean understand everything? I want to fucking, read my religious text. It's like, okay, you want to put your head in the sand, but at some point it will come knocking on your door and you'll have to fucking face the eye of the needle.
Oh, last point before we go. Or maybe it won't be the last one, who knows? But I was looking at this point as well, because in the blogs, in Creation's Journey to Life, there's a blog where Bernard talks about Earth being a prison and Earth also being the eye of the universe. In the very next sentence, he says that, right? And I was looking at that and just looking at this point of like, your weakness is your prison, right? Wherever you are weak, that holds you back. But also that is the eye or the key for you to actually become strong, like through that weakness. Like you can see, oh, this is like if you're physically weak, right? And you have all these issues because you're physically weak, that is your prison. You cannot build anything because you're physically like, you're not able to do it. But as you actually focus on building that weakness, building that strength, or becoming strong through that weakness, that is your key. That is like, oh, now I can do all these other things. In the same way, Earth is the point of like, you have to take physical responsibility, like actual physical responsibility. You have to understand yourself. If you abdicate your responsibility, abdicate your own understanding of yourself, then what happens, what becomes of you is you're kind of feel like this is a prison, because you're just going to keep allowing things to spiral and direct you. And until you take on that responsibility, until you see that responsibility, until you can actually direct yourself, that's where the key is, right? And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and it's why we ought to become very, very effective. Like I know we're decently effective right now, but it's like way next level, because it's like I noticed this too, especially with becoming a parent. It's like you want to do everything for your child to make sure that they're set up for success, thriving, happiness, all that. But then you realize it's like, okay, well, you can pretty much control what happens in your home, right? Like we don't have fucking TVs and like we don't listen to the news and shit. But then it's like outside your home. So, okay, make sure we're in a decent neighborhood. Okay, cool. But then it's like, well, fuck, like you really take it all the way and you realize, well, even the fact that the Middle East is basically halfway around the world from us, it's all interconnected. And so it's like when I look at being the greatest parent, being the greatest human I can be, it involves becoming so fucking effective. So right now I see the fact that there's war and shit going on in the Middle East. That is weakness that I'm accepting and allowing. It's a form of weakness. It's a form of blame, spite, victimhood, all that on some level I'm still allowing because I am not yet in the room where I can be what UN, World Economic Forum, whatever, where you can actually have the influence with these people. Yet it's us as a group getting there, because just me or just Cameron got there, just Drake got there, it doesn't matter. It's as a group rising to that level, whether we go in that room or we have our own room, whatever it is, that is then the level where you can start to, have leverage on where's the world system headed. But it's also done grassroots, bottom up. It's not this intelligence where World Economic Forum sitting in their fucking room, the intelligence of the world, or the AI is the intelligence of the world. It's that self-organizing through everybody. It's like that's really what we're here to create and what we are creating.
So I'll give my final thoughts. So if I were to give, let's say, a final solution to this Palestinian problem.
Whoa. Final solution.
Yeah, to solve
like
the
in
problem.
chemistry, like a solvent.
No, to solve the
solution.
problem actually, right? Look at this hypothetical scenario. What if all the Israeli people and even the government of Israel was like, you know what? This whole situation was messed up. This is totally unacceptable. But if we respond with just trying to kill people, like clearly, if I can see a guy who's about to bomb somebody or do something, let's get rid of that guy. He's done. He's out of here. Okay. Now, but that being said, let's do that in a way where we don't have to harm a bunch of innocent, quote unquote, people. But what if their whole approach was like, look, you know what? We actually love every Palestinian. We even love the Hamas terrorist people. And we realize because of their education and because of other factors, they are acting in spite. So here's what our plan. We're going to take all the money that we've received from around the world that we constantly get in US aid and all this stuff, putting up defense barriers and missile domes and all that. Here's what we're going to do. Okay. And you guys can monitor it and make sure we're actually doing it so you can have total transparency on it. We're going to make sure that no Palestinian children go to bed hungry. They get proper nutrition, just like we would expect from the Israeli kids. We're going to make sure they get proper education. We're going to make sure they get proper medical care. We're going to make sure they get clean water. We're going to take them in as our own. And I'm not going into like create their own state and all this. That's a long-term thing. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just saying they were like, you know what, we're going to shift our starting point. And think about that. If they did that, now, do you know what the Middle East countries' response, the Muslim countries' response would be? We don't know.
No.
But isn't it more likely they'd be like, oh, wow, like this is pretty cool. That's unexpected. Maybe we should work with them. They certainly wouldn't have any excuse on the world stage to be like, well, they hate us, so we have to hate them, and it's just a fight for our lives. Like, wouldn't it be like, wow, they're taking care of us? Like, maybe we should just cool. Like, now, is that going to happen? It's not going to happen. I know, because the response by the government and the people, it's the collective intelligence that's doing this. And the collective intelligence can't go past a certain point if the individuals are still accepting all these bullshit beliefs and all this stuff. And that is the point of the whole process. Just like you were saying, Mitch, it's like you can start working on yourself. Now you have your family. Now you have your kind of local community. But it has to continue to grow.
Clubhouses.
And that's the whole point of self-realization, is the individuals realizing these points, because then the collective intelligence change, because it's just a function of the individuals. Right. So I just want to throw that out there as an alternative, because it's not about blaming. It's just like, okay, you can react in anger, but it's not, and you should not allow someone to come in and hurt people and all that stuff. That is not acceptable. Okay. And that's a consequence, but you can recognize something as a consequence, you can address it, but then you can look at what's your starting point within how you move forward, right? You could say, we're going to hunt down these terrorist people and not allow them to do that. But also here's what we're going to do, because then I bet the world would be like, maybe we made a mistake with allowing these terrorist people to do this stuff. Let's help you. And then since you're going to be doing all this other stuff, we'll help you on that too. And let's work together and let's just stop the whole thing. Let's just stop giving these people money to have bombs and stuff like that. Or however.
Right.
And then if there's no money flow, then there's no way,
right. So then it's converting where the money goes.
If the Israeli type people didn't know where the money was coming from, I mean, they're like the one thing you think they would know about.
Yeah. Because then it's like, well, the profit machine of war isn't going to work. But it's like, well, let's just change our collective level of intelligence of now what we're putting the money towards. What if we put it towards more sustainable solutions, growing great fucking food, like having systems in place so that every last kid is getting fed and building those distribution systems.
Stop reading fucking history books. Read sci-fi. Because history books is written by the victors. The sci-fi is written by the imaginaries, the creatives, who are like, here's what things could be. And it's like, this whole idea of like, well, if we all laid down our arms, there wouldn't be any war. It's like, yeah, exactly. But you can't do that because the other side, they're just bad. And it's like, they're saying the same thing about you. What if we both stop saying that? Well, yeah, it'd be great, but it's not real. It's like
that's the will to forgive.
Right.
It's being like, hey, look, okay, I don't know exactly what you're going to do, but I trust myself enough to go, let's fucking do a new path.
What's the worst case scenario? You forgive and you lay down your arms and then the enemy kills you. What do you care? You're going to go to heaven afterwards anyway. So what do you care? What do you have to lose here?
Because there's that little seed of fucking doubt that heaven isn't real.
Right.
And that we're actually supposed to create heaven on fucking earth.
Yeah, look at your actions. What do you act like is real? Not Israel. What do you act is real?
Yeah, I mean, unless you have fucking dyslexia, then obviously you need technotype.
Right.
Well, hold on. We'll cut that part out. Okay, my bad. I forgot.
Not that it's
there are monopolies on words.
Dyslexia or anything like that. We're just saying,
yeah.
You have it, you can still benefit.
My sympathy with people who have
your
dyslexia.
Disability.
Yeah, you should talk to your doctor. Talk to your doctor about dyslexia.
Yes.
They probably got like Ritalin or something. It's cool, but
Hilarious.
Okay.
That's the one thing I have to watch.
Hey, look at I say. Join us.
Join us. Yeah, come hang out here with us and
come on the fucking hangouts and invite your friends. Go to a
sure.
local clubhouse and support your local clubhouse.
Yes.
Get them every week.
Yeah, we got to move faster. Because exactly what Cam was saying is like, why can't everybody see that? Why is that a thing that not everybody automatically says, yeah, that's the route to go? Like, that's so obvious. I don't think there's a single person listening to this that would go, no, that's not a good idea. As in, like, no, I don't like it. I don't like that they would use the money to educate people and make sure they're fed and well clothed.
Where's the drama in that?
Yeah, right.
And then if the last point is, well, they're still going to hate us because it's a religious difference, then let's just drop that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's start with the basic fucking physical needs. Get the nutrition, get the water. Then we can like have some dialogue.
Let's try that first. Let's actually live the principles of the religion. Okay. So we're not just arguing about a bunch of hypothetical bullshit that we're not really even living anyways. Okay.
Right. It's like phases to it. It's cool.
Yeah. So anyway, join us so we can spread this and
have ultimate fulfillment.
Exactly. There we go. All right. See you guys on next week.
Bye.